Hello everybody and welcome to the second video in this Django SaaS tutorial series. In this video, we'll be continuing from where we left off in video 1. If you haven't watched that video, please go back and check it out. What we'll do specifically here is set up most of the stuff related to our courses. So we'll actually have a course database model that we'll write. We'll connect that to an admin dashboard, which will allow us to manage our courses, create them, give users access, etc. And then we'll set up the Stripe integration so users have the ability to actually purchase the course and then have access to it. That's what will be handled in this video. As a reminder, my name is Tim. I'm a developer advocate for the channel, and I run my own YouTube channel, Tech with Tim, which has hundreds of other programming tutorials, which you can check out. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into video number 2. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, just to give you a bit of information on what we actually need to do here. First, we're going to make a database model, which represents our course. We're then going to add this to the admin panel. Then we're going to make our various different templates and views. One for viewing a list of all the courses, and another for viewing individual course content, which is going to be gated to only subscribers or people that have bought that course. Let's begin with the database model. So we're going to go to course here. We're going to go to models, and inside of models, we're going to write the database model. So we're going to say from django.contrib.auth.models, import the user model, and we're going to say class course. This is going to be a models.model, and we're going to start setting a few fields. So what we do inside of here whenever we're creating a database model is specify all of the fields and the value type for those fields that we want to have, and Django will automatically map that for us in the database. Now, Django uses something known as an ORM. This is an object relational mapping. That essentially means that whatever we see in Python here, we can treat as regular Python data. So it allows us very easily to work with it in Django, but then it will map whatever types we specify in Python to the correct types based on the database engine. So in this case, it's Postgres. If you're using MySQL, SQLite, it automatically will have the correct database queries for us running in the backend that we don't need to deal with. So very, very helpful. And you'll see how we do this here. So we're going to say title is equal to models.char field. And we're going to say this is max length equal to 200. This will be the title of the course. For the content, I'm going to say this is a models.text field. Now, of course, in a course, you're probably going to have more complex data. In this case, I'm just setting up a very, very slim minimal model. You could adjust this. You could have other models. You might have videos. You might have quizzes. You'd have a bunch of other stuff, right? But we don't really have time for that in this video. So we'll just keep it very simple with some text content for now. We're going to say created at is equal to the models.datetime field. And we'll have this be auto now add equal to true. What that means is this will automatically kind of set this when we create the field or when we create this database instance. That way we don't need to actually specify the time we created at, it just automatically happens. Next, we need updated. So we're going to say updated at is equal to models.datetime field. This time it's going to be auto now equal to true. So next, we're going to have the instructor. Now this is going to be equal to a models.foreign key. Now the foreign key needs a database model that it's going to be related to. So we're going to say user, and then it needs to have an on_delete. This is going to be models.cascade, and then we're going to have a related underscore name, which is going to be courses_taught. Now, I know this is a bit confusing if you're unfamiliar with foreign keys. The way that a foreign key works is this essentially gives a relationship between one row and another row. So in this case, we have a relationship between this specific course, so whatever course it is that we're looking at, and the user who created this course, which in this case we're calling the instructor. So that's why I'm specifying user here. On delete means if I delete the user who created this course, I will subsequently delete this course. So that's what cascade means. There's a few other options there. For related name, this is the field that's going to be initialized on the user field or on the user row that then stores this course. Seems a bit weird, but I'm saying courses taught. So that means we're going to create a new column or a new field on this user called courses taught, and that's going to contain the ID or the reference to this course, as well as any other courses that this user might teach. So that's how the foreign key works. Again, there's a lot of documentation you can read about related to that. Next, we're going to have subscribers. Now, this is going to be models.many to many field. This is, again, going to be related with a user. And the idea here is we're going to have an array of all of the different users that own this course or are subscribers of this course. The reason why we're going with many to many as the relationship type is that a course can have multiple users that own it, and users can own multiple courses, okay? So that's why we need many to many, whereas with the foreign key, this is kind of a one-to-many relationship where one user can teach multiple different courses, but one course cannot be taught by multiple different users, okay? This gets into database semantics, which we don't really need to go through, but I'm going to say my related name is equal to courses underscore subscribed. So now same thing on the actual user itself. We'll now have this field, which stores the reference to all of the courses that they own. Now we're going to say blank equals true. The reason we do that is so we can initialize this as an empty field when we first create this course, and we don't need to have any subscribers initially. Next, we're going to have a price. Now this is going to be a models.decimal field. Now the decimal field will give it max underscore digits equal to 6. And we'll say the decimal places is equal to 2. And then we'll give this a default value of 199. Now you can set that default to whatever you want, but we just want a default so we don't get any issues. And then we're going to say define underscore underscore string self. And we're just going to return here the self.title. You can return any string representation you want, but this way, if we decide to print out the course, we'll get the title of it so we can view some information when we're debugging or logging this. Okay, that is the model for our course. Now, what we'll do is we'll make migrations in our database to set up this table. So we're going to say Python manage.py make migrations. Okay, so you can see that it says create model course. And then we're going to say Python manage.py migrate. And it's going to go to our MySQL database here and actually initialize this table for us and all of the foreign key relationships that we set up. Okay, so now we have that. Next, we're going to go to admin. Inside of admin, we're going to write something that just registers this course, which allows us to view it from the admin panel. So we're going to say from .models import course. Okay. We are then going to say at admin.register, and we're going to register course. And beneath this, we're going to say class course admin, and we're going to specify a few meta details for this. So we're going to say admin.model admin like that. And then we're going to go here and we're going to display all of the different fields that we actually want to be able to view. So I'm going to say list underscore display is equal to title. And then this is going to be instructor, and then created at, and then updated at. Okay. We're then going to have search underscore fields. And this is going to be equal to title and instructor underscore underscore username. And then we're going to have list underscore filter is equal to created at, updated at, and then instructor. And that's all we need actually. Okay. So you might be wondering, what are all of these things here? Well, the list display is what we're actually going to view when we are displaying the courses. Search fields, these are the fields that we're able to search the course by. When I say instructor username, the reason I have 2 underscores here is this is accessing the username of the instructor reference. So we kind of need to dereference it with the double underscore to access the username from that instructor, because remember, instructor is a foreign key. And then list filter. This is, again, when we're filtering in the list, we can view create at, update at, and instructor. Okay, so now that we have that, let's run our server. And actually, before we do that, we need to create something known as a super user, which is going to be able to access the admin panel, essentially creating an administrator user. So we're going to say Python manage.py create super user like that. We are then going to give, actually, do we need to give the name? I don't think so. I think I can just hit enter. When I do that, ask for the username, leave blank for Tim. I'm going to go with tech with Tim, actually. Email address, we don't need that. Password, so that's something you're going to remember. Okay, and we successfully created the super user. Now we're going to go Python manage.py run server, and and I'll show you that we can sign into the admin panel, which is at /admin, and then we can view this, what do you call it? This course that we just registered. So how we can do that? Well, let's open this up. Okay, and let's go to /admin. All right, you are authenticated as Tim1, but are not authorized to access this page. Would you like to log into a different account? Yes, I would. So I'll log in with Tech with Tim. And when I do this, since I'm using a super user, brings me here. And then notice I have courses. And the reason I can see courses is because I registered that in my application. I also can view all my users. Let's go to courses. Okay. And you can see giving us this information, right? Filtering because we put that in. And we can click on add course and we can make a new course. So for the title, I'll go with Tim's Great Course. This is just some sample content. I need to select my instructor, so I'll go with Tech with Tim. I could add a subscriber if I want, but I'm not going to. And for the price, we'll go with $10.99, and then we will save. Okay, now you can see we have Tim's Great Course, and we could add more courses if we want to do that. And you see these few fields we have here. Again, the reason we're viewing these fields is because that's what we specified in here, right? So the list display, that's what we're seeing in the list display. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have been able to create a course, view the course, etc. Now what we want to do is be able to see a list of all of the different courses that we have once we are authenticated and signed in as a user. We don't want to have to view it from the admin panel. So how are we going to do that? Well, we need to go to course and we need to make a new directory called templates. Now inside of templates, we're going to create two templates. The first is simply going to be a list of all of the courses. The second will be some specific information for each course. So for templates, we're going to make a new one here. And we're going to call this course_list.html. And we'll make one more, course_detail.html. Now we can zoom in a bit so we can see this a bit easier. We're going to close that. We're going to go to course list, and we're going to start writing this template. So just like before, we're going to extend from the base template. So we're going to say extends base.html. Okay, and then we're going to override our blocks. So we're going to say block content. Okay, and then %% end block. Inside of the block, we are going to display the courses. So I'm going to have an h2 tag here. And this is going to say courses. And then we're going to loop through all of the different courses and display them. Now, it's going to seem a bit weird because we haven't yet passed the courses variable. I'll show you how we grab all of the courses and pass it to this template. But for now, we're going to imagine we have them. So we're going to say %% for course in courses. And what we're picturing here is that we're going to have a courses variable that's passed to this template that contains all the course data. So we're going to end the for here. And inside of the for loop, we're going to display a card for each one of our courses that shows whether the course is locked or unlocked for the specific user and the price of that course if it is locked. So we're going to put a div. We're going to say class is equal to card. We're going to do p2 deflex flex row align items center. Okay, this is just some basic Bootstrap styling. Don't stress about it too much if you don't know what all the classes do. We're then going to have a div. This is going to be class equal to column 10. This means we're going to take up 10 of the 12 possible spaces for our flex item. We're then going to have course.title. Notice I put this inside of two sets of curly braces. That's how you render just some regular variable. So rather than having like a block here where we're using a for loop, we're going to render a variable. So we use two sets of curly braces. And then we're going to have course.price like that. And then we will add a USD. And that will be our first div. Okay, so that's the first div, which is going to be on the left side of this kind of container. We're then going to have another div, and this div will be pushed to the right side based on how I'm spacing this with my flex box. So I'm just going to say column 2. So this takes up 10 out of 12 spaces. This takes up 2 out of 12 spaces, which pushes this to the right-hand side of the card. Now, inside of here, we have some dynamic content because for some people, the course is going to be unlocked. For others, it's locked and they need to buy it. So how do we check that? Well, we can say if course.is_unlocked. And this will be something that we pass from our front end, from our back end to our front end, so we know if it's locked or unlocked for the specific user. We're then going to say else, and then we're going to end our if, so %% end if. All right, so if it is unlocked, then we're going to have an a tag here, okay, and this is going to have a class equal to a button, and this is going to be btn underscore success, okay, and we're going to have an href here, and the href is going to be equal to a dynamic URL, so %, and then URL, and we want to go to course underscore detail. Now course detail, let's have a look at this here, is this URL. Okay, so the name course detail, but notice that we take in a path parameter. The path parameter means this is a dynamic value that we can change. So we can pass something like course/1, course/2, which is the ID of the course we want to view. So when we are writing our dynamic URL here, we actually specify any of the variables that we might need to pass just directly after the name. So I'm going to say course.id. Now what that means is I'm going to go to the course detail root, and for any variables that I need to use, I'm going to use course.id as that variable, which means I'm going to pass, well, course ID as course.id. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's how that works. For this, we're going to say unlocked, or actually we could say like view course. Okay. And then we're going to copy this. We're going to paste this here, and we're going to change this. So rather than button success, we're going to say button danger. And we're going to say by course. I'm changing them slightly from the demo that I had, but I think this is better. And for the URL, this is actually going to be create underscore checkout underscore session with, again, the course ID. And that's because we're going to need to make a checkout session to buy this. We haven't yet written that route, but we will write that in a second. Okay, so that is our first course list template. We might as well go and do the course detail now because it's fairly simple. So we're going to say %, extends base.html. We're going to do our block. So block content, and then %, end block. Okay, inside of here, we're going to add a simple h2 tag, and we're going to say course.title. Okay, let's end this tag. We're going to do a p tag. Obviously, you can make this prettier, but we're just keeping it nice and simple for now. Inside of here, we're going to say instructor. And then this is going to be the course.instructor. Okay, dot username, like that. And then we'll put the course content in a paragraph tag. So we'll say course.content. If you want, you can put, created at, updated at, all that kind of stuff. But this is simply what we need for now, just so we have some page that displays information about the course. Now we're going to go to views, and we're going to write these two views for viewing the course list and for viewing the course details. All right, so let's get started here. The first one we can write will be the course list. So for the course list, login required, okay, that's what we have. And we're going to start by actually grabbing all of the courses that we have. Now to do that, we're going to say from.models, import course, and this is where the ORM comes in. We can say courses is equal to course.objects.all. When we do that, that just gives us access to all of the instances of our course. We're now going to say if request.user.isAuthenticated. Now this is just making sure that the user is authenticated and they are logged in. We don't really need to put this here because we already have login required, but it's just good practice. We're going to say for course in courses, and we're going to say course.isUnlocked is equal to the request.user. Request.user is going to be the user who's signed in with the current session. And we're going to say if they are in the course.subscribers.all, then that means the course is unlocked, right? So that's how we check if they have access to the course. For every single course, we say, okay, course.isUnlocked for this specific user, right? Is if the request.user is in the subscribers. Fairly straightforward. Now what we'll do is go here and we'll have an else statement, and we'll say for course in courses, course.isUnlocked is equal to false. Now, the reason we do this here is because if they're not authenticated, well, then they obviously don't have access to the course. So we'll just put false. Then we're going to say context here is equal to courses like that. And then when we return our render here, we're just going to pass the context. Now, really, I could have just taken this and pasted that inside of here. But in case we had more information, I just wanted to put it in a variable. Okay, so now what this is going to do is return a courses variable as it renders not the base template, but we want to render the course underscore list.html template, right? So now when we go to list, we pass in courses and we render all of that data. Now, before we test this out, let's just go back to views and let's quickly write the course detail because this one's going to be kind of simple. So what we're going to do here is just actually import a redirect. We're also going to import a get object or 404. We're going to go down here. And if you want to view details of a course, we first need to make sure that you actually have access to that course. So what I can do here is to pass a variable course ID. Now, the reason I'll pass this is because if we look at the URLs, we can see we have a dynamic variable here, a path parameter course ID. By default, Django will parse that for us and give us access to it in this parameter course ID. So I'm going to start by getting the course that has the ID we're trying to access. So I'm going to say get object or 404. This is a course and the ID is equal to course underscore ID. So this is going to return a 404 page if the ID of the course does not exist that we're trying to access. Otherwise, it's going to give us that course instance from the database. We now need to make sure we have access to that. So we're going to say if request.user is not in the course.subscribers.all, then we're just going to return a redirect, and we're going to redirect to the course list URL. Now, we could and probably should actually display an error message saying unauthorized, but in this case, it's fine. We'll just redirect, and if you wanted to add that, you could. Lastly, here, we're going to say context is equal to course, and then this is going to be course like that. And then we're going to pass the context, and rather than base.html, this is going to be the course detail.html. So now we have course detail root and the course list root. Again, this is all working. So if we don't have access, we redirect them. If we do have access, we just display that course data. Okay, now the only thing that's going to happen here is you can see that in course list, we have this create checkout session kind of URL. Since I've put this here and we don't actually have this URL written yet, we are going to get an error when I try to view this page. So for now, let's remove this from the href and just make it a pound sign, just so we don't get that error and we can test this out. And then we'll actually move on and write some of the Stripe hooks that we need so that everything will work. So let's just quit this and restart it. And now if I go back here, so let's run this instance and let's go to course like that. You can see that it gives me this. Now, clearly I've messed up slightly with some of my HTML, so we'll fix that in a second. But you can see I'm viewing the course. If I press on that, it just brings me to pound, right? So let's create another course and let's also fix this HTML. So let's go here to the course list and let's see where I've made a mistake. All right. So I see that I have flu row here instead of flex row, which was messing everything up. So if we go back here and we refresh, you can see now that we actually get it pushed to the side as I hoped it would be, and it looks much better. What I want to do now is add another course. So let's add another course and see how that appears. So let's go to /admin, courses, add course. Let's go with Joe's OK course, some content, instructor will be Tech with Tim again. This time, let's give ourselves access to this so we can actually view it. So I'm just going to kind of select my guy here and go on save. Now, if we go back to course, you can see that we actually have access to this one because we put ourselves in the subscriber. So if we click on view course, brings us to this page and we can view the specific course info. Okay, going back, click on buy course, doesn't work. Eventually, it's going to bring us to Stripe, and that's actually what we are going to do next. Okay, so we actually wrote all of the stuff related to courses and gating the access to the course. Next, we want to do the Stripe integration. I was going to save this for the other video, but this video is not too long yet, so we'll do it in this video. And then in the next video, we can really focus on deployment, which will be a few different steps. So how do we do the Stripe integration? Well, Stripe is actually very helpful, and there's not a ton of code to write, but essentially what's going to happen is we're going to pop up a Stripe checkout page, which will contain the price of the course. That checkout page is going to have some session data, which pretty much determines what course it is the user's buying. Once they purchase the course, Stripe is actually going to send a request to our backend, and it's going to tell us whether or not this purchase was successful. If it was successful, we're going to unlock the course for the user. If it wasn't, we're just not going to unlock it. So it's kind of like a 2-3 step thing, right? We press on the button, we get brought to the checkout page. We enter the information, we press enter. Stripe verifies the payment and then sends back to us whether or not this was successful. If it is successful, we unlock the course. If it's not, we don't. Okay, first thing we need to do though to do this is create a Stripe account. So let's go to Stripe in our browser and we're going to create a new account here. So Stripe dashboard, I'm going to go to Stripe login. I already have an account, so it's going to automatically sign me in here. If you don't have a Stripe account, then create one. Now, what we'll do is we'll make a new project. You can see I have Course Platform, which is a project I already kind of wrote. The reason why is I was using it before when I was testing this project. So let's make a new account and let's go Course Django. Okay. And I will fill in all the information for this account and then we can continue. Okay, so now that we're here, what we actually want to get is an API key from Stripe. Once we have that API key, the next thing we'll need to do is create a webhook, which I'll talk to you about in a second, and we'll have to write a little bit of code so that we can actually display this kind of Stripe checkout. So we're going to go to API keys for developers here, and inside of here, you see that we have a publishable key and we have a secret key. Now, this is in test mode, right? So if you test API keys, toggle to view the live keys. For now, we're going to do everything in test mode so that we can purchase all this stuff quite easily, right? And then obviously when we're doing deployment, or if you wanted this to be live, you would use the real keys. Okay, so we're going to grab this publishable key by copying it. Now we need to add a few settings here inside of our course platform. So we're going to go to course platform, settings.py, and I'm going to make sure I blur out all of my passwords here. I'm just going to get to the correct area and we're going to start filling in some Stripe data. All right, so at the bottom of our page here, we're just going to write the following. We're going to say if debug, so if debug mode is true, because that's when we're going to use kind of our Stripe debug keys, we're going to write the few variables. We're going to say Stripe publishable, if we can spell this correctly, key is equal to, and we're going to paste in that Stripe API key that was the publishable key. The next thing we need is the secret key. So we're going to say secret underscore key is equal to, and then we're going to paste that, and then we're going to say the Stripe underscore endpoint underscore secret is equal to an empty string, and in a second, we're going to paste that in when we hook up the endpoint. Go back to Stripe. We're now going to reveal the secret key. Obviously, I'll delete this after, so it's testing anyways. Doesn't matter if you guys see it, but you don't want to share that with people. And we're going to paste that in here. So now we have our publishable key and our secret key. We need the endpoint secret, but we'll do that in a minute. So now that we have that, we want to start setting up a few URLs that we're going to use for Stripe. Now, it's going to seem a bit complex, but just bear with me. I will do my best to explain everything. So we're going to go into payment, and we're going to go to URLs. So in our URL patterns, we're going to do the following. We're going to say path, and then this is going to be int : course underscore ID /. This is going to go to a function that we've not yet written, so I'm going to write pass for right now. And the name of this is going to be create underscore checkout underscore session. So this is where we're going to be brought when we actually want to buy a course. It's going to be payment / and then the ID of the course we want to buy. And that's going to bring us to a function which will actually render the Stripe checkout. Now, beyond that, we have a few other URLs we need. We need to have course underscore success. Now, what this means is that we actually successfully purchased the course. So this is going to be /, and then we're going to have, instead of here, int : course ID. This is the course that we purchased. Again, a function that we've not yet written, so we'll write pass. And then we'll have the name equal to course success. Okay, don't worry about the passes. We're going to fix those in a second. Next, we're going to have a path. Okay, and this is going to be course underscore cancel, comma, pass. This will be another function. The name is going to be course cancel. Okay, and then we're going to have another path, and this path is going to be Stripe /webhook. This is actually what the Stripe API is going to call for us, which is going to tell us whether or not this was successful. And then the name of this is going to be the stripe underscore webhook. So let's write that in here like that. Okay, so those are the roots that we need. Now we need obviously the corresponding functions for all of these. So we're going to go inside of views and we're going to write those functions. So the first function that we need is going to be the create checkout session. So we're going to say at login underscore required. We'll import that in a second. Define create checkout underscore session. We're going to take in a request and we're going to take in a course ID and we're going to return something. For now, we'll just return none. Now we need a few other functions. We're going to have a define stripe underscore webhook. This is going to take in a request. For now, we're going to return none, but this is where we're going to authorize or determine whether or not the purchase was successful. We're then going to have a define handle underscore checkout underscore session. Okay, this is going to take in a session. And again, for now, we'll just return none. I don't actually need to write none, but that's fine. Lastly, we're going to have at login required. We're going to say this is define course underscore success. We're going to take in a request. And actually, now that I think of it, we don't even need the course ID, so we'll remove that from there. But we're going to say request, and we're going to return, and we're going to have an at login underscore required again. And this is going to be the course underscore cancel, request, and return. So let's hook up these functions now. So back to URLs. And where it says this kind of path parameter, I'm going to remove that because we actually don't need that. And I'm going to say from dot import views. For this, it's going to be views dot create, or what is this? I'm not sure why this views is giving me the wrong thing. Let me have a look here. Okay, for some reason my autocomplete's not working, but this is going to be create underscore checkout underscore session. That should highlight green. Okay, so that is working. Next, we're going to have views dot course underscore success. And we're going to have views dot course underscore cancel. And then we're going to have views dot stripe webhook. Okay, so now all our functions are hooked up to the corresponding routes. We're going to go back into payment here, and we're going to start importing the stuff that we need. Okay, so we actually have quite a few imports here. Again, I apologize. This is probably the most complex part of the video. So we're going to say import stripe, as well as render. We're going to import redirect. We're going to do get object or 404. And then we're going to have a function called reverse. Now we're going to import a few other things. We're going to say from course.models import course. So this is going to import that course model from our course app. We're then going to say from Django.conf. We're going to import settings. We're going to say from Django.views.decorators.csrf. We're going to import the csrf exempt. Now, apparently I cannot type very well today. Decorators, okay, that's how you spell that. And we're going to copy this and paste this down here, and we're going to change this to HTTP. And rather than this, it's going to be require underscore post like that. We're then going to say, again, from Django dot utils dot encoding import smart string. We're going to say from Django dot HTTP import JSON response. We're going to say from Django dot contrib dot auth dot models import user. And from the decorators, this is actually going to be a different one here. Let's copy this down here from Django.contrib.auth.decorators. We're going to import the login required. My apologies, I know there's a lot of stuff here, but we do actually need to use all of it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the Stripe API key. So I'm going to say stripe.api key is equal to settings.theStripe underscore secret underscore key. Now that's going to import that from the settings file, right? So the Stripe secret key, it's going to use that there for us. So we have to initialize the API key before we can start using the Stripe module. And now our login required decorator works, and we're going to add a few other decorators. So the handle, or actually, sorry, the Stripe webhook is going to have the following: CSRF exempt and require post. Now, this just allows us to actually use this or to have this triggered from the Stripe API rather than from the front end of our website, which is kind of how the CSRF token stuff works. So we're exempting it from that, and we're requiring that this has a post request, so you can't send, say, a GET request to this Stripe webhook. Now, there's a bunch of stuff we need to do here. To make this simple, though, for now, instead of course success, we're going to redirect here to the course underscore list, and then we're going to redirect from the course cancel as well. Okay, we're going to go inside of create checkout session, and what we're going to do in create checkout session is exactly that. We're going to create a checkout session using Stripe. This is going to render a Stripe front end for us, and then what's going to happen as we go through the Stripe front end, when we press that finish button, we're going to get a request sent to the Stripe webhook, which is then where we're going to handle a lot of the redirection and unlocking the course. Bear with me, there's a bunch of stuff that we need to write here. So inside of create checkout session, we're going to begin by getting the course that we want to purchase, right? Because remember, we're passing that as a path parameter to create checkout session. So we're going to say course is equal to get object or 404. This is course, and we're going to say PK, which is another one for ID, is equal to course ID. By default, the primary key is going to be the ID. So in this case, we can just say PK. We also could specify this as ID if we want to do that. It's going to be the same thing. Anyways, now that we have the course, for Stripe, we actually need to convert whatever the price is into the price in cents, because that's what the Stripe API accepts. So we're going to say price in cents is equal to an int of the course.price multiplied by 100. So we're just converting that dollar figure into cents. Now what we do is we create a Stripe session, which gives us a special URL, which we can redirect to. When we redirect to that session URL, that opens that Stripe kind of window, right? That checkout window where we can buy what we need. So we're going to say session is equal to stripe.checkout.session.create. Now, this is kind of the most friendly way to create this. There's a lot of other options with Stripe, but I'm going to recommend you reference the documentation for Django specifically. Now, we're going to say the payment method types are equal to, and then you can specify whatever methods you want. In this case, I'm just going to allow credit card. Now, I'm going to say line items is equal to the following, and this is some of the data that we need. So, first of all, we're going to have the price data. Okay, this is in a Python dictionary. Now we need lowercase here. For the price data, we need to specify the currency. Now you could do this dynamically, but I'm just going to specify USD as the currency. Now for the unit amount, this is the amount in cents of that currency. So this is going to be the price in cents. We're then going to say product underscore data. Now this is what you're actually buying. And we're going to say the name of the product is the course.title. Okay. And then lastly here, we need to specify the quantity. In this case, the quantity will always be 1, but sometimes you could be buying more than one thing. Okay, so that's the line items, which essentially just specifying the price for us, right? Now we need to do mode. The mode of the checkout is going to be payment. Now we also have like refund and other modes, right? But payment is one we want. And then what we need to pass here is where we're going to go when this is successful and where we're going to go when this is canceled. So we're going to say the success underscore URL is equal to request dot build underscore absolute underscore URL or URI, sorry. And then inside of this, we're going to say reverse, and we're going to pass course underscore success. All this is doing is building the correct URL to navigate us to this route right here, because it's called course success. Now, the reason I did 2 routes here, even though they're the exact same, is because you could modify these to display a message, to bring you to like a, thanks for buying page. In my case, they're just both going to redirect to the same page, but I wanted to show you how you can have a success and a cancel or like failed payment page so that you guys can implement those and customize them as you want. Okay, so now we have success. Now we want cancel. So we can actually just copy this, and this is going to be the cancel URL, which is also the fail URL. And rather than course success, it's going to be course cancel. Okay. Now, one thing we need to do here is we need to add some data into this session so that we can actually keep track of who it is that purchased this course and what course it is that they purchased. You'll see why we need this in a minute, but what's going to happen is we're going to go to like a separate website, right? By the way, let me just add my commas here so this doesn't give us an error. This session is going to bring us to a separate website. Then what we're going to do is be redirected back to our own website, and then this Stripe webhook is going to be called, and it's going to be called with any data that was contained in this session. Now, in order for us to know what user purchased this and what course it was that we're buying, we need to include that data in this session so that when we have the Stripe webhook called, we can unlock the course for the correct user. Again, you'll see what I mean, but we're going to say metadata is equal to course underscore ID. This is going to be course underscore ID. And then we're going to say the user ID, and this is going to be the session, or not the session, the request.user.id. So this is just extra data you're including in the session, which then will be available here in the Stripe webhook, which is what we need. So then we're going to say return, redirect, and we're going to redirect to the session.url. So let me zoom out a little bit. You can see that inside a create checkout session, we get the course that you're trying to purchase. We figure out how many cents the course costs, and then we create a Stripe session with all this data. Let me add my comma so it doesn't yell at me here. Then we redirect to the session.url, which brings us to the Stripe checkout page. That's actually all we have to do to kind of show the Stripe checkout page. From there, what's going to happen is we're going to purchase, and then we're going to get a call to here. This is where the logic's going to happen that will unlock the course. We'll look at that in 1 second, but for now, let's make sure this is working. So we're going to go to Python manage.py run server, and we're going to go back here, and we'll go to /course. Now let's go to buy course, and we need to change that URL so it brings us to this create checkout session. So let's go back here to course list, and we're going to update this URL here. This is going to be what we had before, so let's write this in here, %% URL create underscore checkout underscore session, and then the parameter we're passing is the course.id. Okay, save that, go back here, refresh, okay, by course, and we got an issue here. It says received unknown parameter, line items, price data. Okay, it's possible that I just spelt something incorrectly, so let's go back here to our views, and let me figure out what I did wrong. All right, so I was just looking here and I found the issue, and it was that quantity here needs to be outside of the price data and inside of the line item instead, okay? So I had it kind of in the wrong object, and that's why we were getting that issue. So if I go back here and we refresh now, let's see, it brings us to the Stripe checkout, okay? And you can see it has course Django, has the price, Tim's great course. You could have some more info here if you want, and then we can go ahead and actually purchase. Now, purchasing is not going to do anything for us right now because we need to set up the webhook. Now, setting up the webhook is a few steps here, but you can see that if I go back, it will redirect me back here. If I click on buy course, it brings me to the Stripe checkout. So Stripe integration is going well. What we'll do now is start writing the Stripe webhook and then connecting it. So let's go inside a Stripe webhook. Remember, this is what Stripe is going to call. Quite a few things we need to write here that are a bit complex. Just bear with me. This is right from the Stripe documentation. So we're going to say payload is equal to smart string request.body, which is going to decode this for us. We're then going to say the sig header is equal to request.meta. And we're going to access the HTTP underscore Stripe underscore signature. Now, you'll see why we need all this stuff, but it's related to security, just to make sure that we're getting the correct Stripe webhook call that actually is related to the purchase, right? Since we're dealing with money here, we need to be careful. Hence why we're going to have all this kind of weird stuff that you see. So I'm going to have a try. Inside of the try, I'm going to say my event is equal to my Stripe.webhook.construct event, and the event is going to be payload, the sig header, and then settings dot the Stripe underscore endpoint secret. So the way this is kind of going to work is we're going to store an endpoint secret on the server, and we're going to use that to verify that what's hitting this endpoint is related to the payment that was just made and is from our Stripe account or our Stripe dashboard. I don't really know how to describe it better than that, but this is a security measure. So this is another variable or kind of key that we'll get access to in a second when we tell Stripe what endpoint or what URL it should be hitting with the essentially receipt or verification of the purchase. Now, what we're going to do is say accept, and we're going to accept a value error here. Then we're going to return a JSON response, and we're going to say error, and this is going to be an invalid payload. And then we're going to say that the status of this is equal to 400. So unauthorized or bad request. I forget which one that is. I think it's bad request. We're going to say accept, and we're going to accept a stripe.error.signature verification error, like that. Now, if we get that error, we're going to return a JSON response, and we're going to say error invalid signature, okay, and then we're going to say status is equal to 400. Okay, so we're handling all of the things that can go wrong here. Then we're going to say if the event type is equal to checkout.session.completed, that means that we actually successfully made the purchase. So then we're going to say session is equal to event data object, and we're going to say handle checkout session and then session. Otherwise, we're going to return a JSON response, and we're going to say status and then success. Okay, so what is actually going on here? Well, what's happening is this Stripe webhook can potentially have some issues in it, right? So what we're doing is we're getting the payload, which is what's sent to us from Stripe. We're getting the signature associated with it, and then we're crafting an event from the payload, the signature, and then using our endpoint secret. This will verify that all this data is correct and valid and that it's sent from the correct place. Now, if there's an issue, if we have a value error, we're just going to return an issue, right? So we're going to tell, hey, Stripe, there was a problem calling this. Same thing if there's a signature verification error, we return that there was an issue in the response. Now, if all is good, and it should be good most of the time, right? Then what we're going to do is check the event, which is given to us from the Stripe API. It has a type on it, and in that type, it will tell us whether it was successful or not. So if the type is checkout.session.completed, that means, okay, all is good. You actually made the purchase. So we're going to say session is equal to event data object. Now that's going to contain our metadata. It's also going to contain a few other things. Since it contains that metadata, we're going to take all that and we're going to pass that to the handle checkout session. Inside of handle checkout session, we're going to unlock the course for the user because it was successful. Then we're going to return status success. Keep in mind, this here is only interacting with Stripe. This isn't something the user is really seeing or triggering, right? Once they buy the course, then Stripe sends it to this endpoint where then we do all of the unlocking and all the stuff on the back end. The user does not ever actually call this from the front end of the website. It's Stripe's back end that is calling us this to tell us, hey, the purchase was successful. Okay, so inside of handle checkout, we're going to say the course ID is equal to session metadata and then course underscore ID. Again, why we needed the metadata here is so that now when we get the session information and we pass it here, we know what course we were purchasing and we also know the user. So we're going to say the user underscore ID is equal to session metadata and then user underscore ID. And then we're going to say user is equal to user.objects.get. And we're going to say the ID is equal to user.id because we need that reference. Then we're going to say the course is equal to get object or 404. Course primary key is equal to course ID. Now that we have the course and we have the user, we can add this user to the course subscribers. So course.subscribers.add, and then we can add our user. So that's all handle checkout session is doing. This is just unlocking the course for the user, getting the information from our session data, getting the user reference, getting the course reference, adding the user to the course. And that is it. That is actually all the back end here for our kind of Stripe integration. Now what we need to do is go to the Stripe dashboard, and we need to actually set the endpoint, and we need to tell it, hey, this is where you need to send the receipt and the information so we can unlock the course. Now, the issue with that is that Stripe needs to send this to a URL that exists on the internet, right? It can't send it to our local host computer, which is where this is running right now. And in fact, I'm going to close this second. So what we're actually going to do during development, at least, is we're going to set up an ngrok tunnel. Now, this is a public URL that will tunnel or forward data to our local host so that we can actually test the Stripe integration. This is a temporary URL, and we will need to kind of update a few things whenever we rerun ngrok. But what we're going to do now is download ngrok and then set up the tunnel. Let me show you how we do that. All right, so you can see here that I'm on the ngrok website, just ngrok.com/download. This is free. You don't need to pay for it. What I'm going to do is go to Windows, and I'm going to go to zip file, 64-bit, and then download. Now, where am I going to download this? Well, I want to download it to the directory we're working in. So this is going to be the Django SaaS. So I'm going to download the zip file in there. Now I'm going to go and open this up. So reveal in File Explorer, and I'm just going to unzip it. Now it says unconfirmed. Okay, let's wait for it to finish downloading, and then we will unzip. Okay, so I'm just going to right click on this and click on Extract All. Okay, and you're going to see that it will give us a exe file here. I'm just going to copy that exe file and paste it in here. And we can start using this very simply. Now, to use ngrok, it's just an exe file, right? So what we'll do is we'll create another terminal here. So we're going to type ngrok.exe. That should actually execute it for us. Okay, so that is working. But then we're going to do HTTP, and we're going to type in 8000. Now, what this means is we're going to forward all HTTP traffic coming to this ngrok URL to port 8000, which is where our Django server is running. So if I run my Django server, you can see it's running on port 8000 localhost. We have ngrok HTTP 8000, and when we hit enter, you can see that it gives us a URL. And you can see that we have this forwarding URL. Now, this is the URL that we want, so we're going to copy that URL there, and we're going to go and start setting this in a few places. So first of all, we're going to go to settings. All right, so from settings, we need to update a few things here. First of all, we need to go to the CSRF trusted origins, and we need to paste in this URL like that, because we now need to actually trust the ngrok URL as a trusted origin. We then need to go to allowed hosts, and we need to paste it in here as well, except we need to remove the HTTPS. And while we're at it, we're going to allow the host of 127.0.0.1. So that's what we need to do here from Django side. So again, we're adding this to the CSRF trusted origins, and we are adding it to allowed hosts. Now that we have that, let me just rerun this because for some reason it crashed. We're going to go to our Stripe platform. Okay, so here's Stripe. I just found it. What we're going to do is go to webhooks. All right, so from developers, webhooks, we're going to go add an endpoint. And then what we're going to do is paste in our URL here for ngrok. And we're going to go /payment/stripe/webhook. And for events, we're going to go here and we're going to listen for one specific event. Now, the event that we want is checkout complete. So checkout.session.complete is what we're going to select here. That's all we want, okay? And we're going to go add events. Then we're going to add the endpoint, and we should be good. So now this means whenever we complete a checkout, it's going to hit our Stripe webhook endpoint. It's going to go to the view, and this is the wrong views file, of course, and it's going to do all of the stuff that we just wrote. So hopefully this is all set up and working now, but we can test this. So if we go to SaaS here and we refresh, actually, this reminds me, we need to go to the ngrok URL. So we're going to go to ngrok here. We're going to go to /course, and you should see that now this is working, okay? So actually, you could use this from any device now because it's a public URL that's routing to our local host, which is running the server. Let me zoom in a bit. Let's sign in. Tech with Tim. Okay. Now you can see that I have this course that I can buy, so let's go ahead and purchase it. And let me show you how we can do a test purchase. So if I zoom in a bit, you can put in any information you want here, guys. The only thing you need to do is for the card, you just have to use this number exactly, okay? 424242. This is a test card with Stripe. For the expiry date, you just have to put something past the current date. So we can do like 10/28. CVC, any 3-digit number, doesn't matter what you put here. Again, we're in test mode. For name on card, I'll just put Tim. Postal code, just put something that makes sense. B5V3F6. As long as it's the correct format, it'll work. For you guys, zip code in the US probably. Not going to save my information. Going to go ahead and press pay. It should redirect me back, and then my endpoint should get hit. Okay, so we got that. And then I go back here, and it's saying by course still. Now, that is because if I go here, we got an issue at this post endpoint, and it said payment Stripe webhook 400. Okay, so this reminds me, the reason we're getting that issue there is because we forgot to add our endpoint secret. So what we're going to do is go to the signing secret here from Stripe, click on reveal, copy that, and we now need to add that in the settings. So we're going to go to settings and scroll all the way down and then add our Stripe endpoint secret. Now that we have the Stripe endpoint secret, this should be working. So if we go back here, let's go to buy course here. Okay, it's going to bring us to Stripe. Okay, going to go ahead and press on pay here. Give this a second to process. And we should see that we get redirected, and now we have access to the course. And if we go look in our logs here, you can see that we had a post to this endpoint right here, which was successful, which unlocked the course for us. And now if we go here and go on view course, you can see that we can view the course. So with that said, that's going to wrap up this video. We did a lot of stuff there. And actually, before we end, last thing we should probably do here is just make a commit. So git add dot, git commit, add Stripe, and now we have the entire functionality of our site finished, and all we need to do is handle the deployment. Now, handling the deployment is not necessarily trivial. There's a few things that we need to deal with, but we will set up a automatic DevOps pipeline, so every time we make a push to our GitHub repo, it will automatically deploy the website for us. So once the deployment is set up, we don't need to do anything, and we can actually make all of the changes from our local machine. Thanks very much for sticking around through video 2. At this point, you are in the home stretch. In the next video, we're going to handle all of our deployments and get all of this code live so that anyone can access it and you can have a legitimate SaaS application. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.